11 score and 16 years ago, our fathers brought forth on this continent a new nation, conceived in liberty, and dedicated to the proposition that all men are created equal. And I'm celebrating with my review of The Amazing Spider-Man. Yay! Hello everyone, Gilligan Kruger 0829 here, and welcome to the fourth and final day of my Amazing Spider-Man movie series marathon review. Also, Happy Independence Day everyone. Yes, today our great country turns 236 years old. And what better way to celebrate than with a review of the long-awaited Spider-Man reboot? Because, let's face it, is there any hero more American than Spider-Man is? Okay, there's him, but the point I'm ultimately trying to get across is that Spider-Man is finally back in theaters, and despite only being there for literally a day and a half, the film is getting very mixed reception from both critics and audiences alike. Now, Shadow1892 and I saw this at midnight, and our views on it were pretty much the same, and I'm about to give you those views right here and right now. So, sit back and prepare to be amazed. This is the final film in my Spider-Man lineup, The Amazing Spider-Man. So, I'm just going to get it over with right here, right now. This movie is both very similar and very different to Sam Raimi's 2002 film. Peter Parker, played now by Andrew Garfield, is still the high school nerd, but in the last series, where he liked Mary Jane Watson, in this one his crush is his fellow classmate Gwen Stacy, played by the lovely Emma Stone, of course. But that isn't the only difference with the story. You see, in this film, Peter is trying to find information on his father and why he disappeared earlier on in Peter's life. And he thinks he might be able to get that information by talking to Oscorp scientist and his father's former partner, Dr. Curt Connors, played here by Rhys Ifans. But, as he's at Oscorp and trying to talk to Connors, Peter is of course bitten by the radioactive spider, and he starts to develop the spider-like senses and powers. But he does still pursue Connors, and he finds out the secret behind the two. You see, Connors and Richard Parker were trying to find a way to regrow not only tissue, but entire limbs by studying reptile regrowth, mainly from lizards. They thought they had the serum down, but Connors was missing something that Peter provided from his father's research. So, he manages to make the regrowth syndrome, which, at first, heals his arm that he lost earlier in the movie. Okay, before the movie, that isn't seen, but the point is, he doesn't have his arm. But, of course, the serum has some very negative side effects. Connors essentially becomes the Lizard, a giant reptilian creature that wants to spread havoc in New York. And the rest of the movie is essentially Spider-Man's fight with the Lizard, while trying to evade everything else in New York that is pursuing him. Now, let's talk about the obvious things with this remake. Was it really necessary? Not really. In fact, some people didn't even want it. But, like X-Men First Class, which I had very similar thoughts on, I did give this movie a chance, and I personally was very surprised with the final product. In fact, I will say I enjoyed this more than any of the other Raimi movies, because it got most everything down perfectly. With the exception of a few flaws, I really think this was a good superhero movie. Let's start with what I think any Spider-Man movie should get down. Well, the relationships between the characters. Because there are lots of them that, again, I just personally thought were handled very nicely. Like the relationship between Peter and Aunt May and Uncle Ben, played by Sally Field and Martin Sheen, having trouble remembering their names. That relationship is great. The relationship between Peter and Gwen is great. The relationship between Peter and Curt Connors. All of it. It's great. There's really good chemistry between these characters, and I think it's brought forth because we have some really good performances behind it. Andrew Garfield is the superior Spider-Man. He's serious about his role, and he wants to do good but he has a lot of fun with it. Like in this one, Spider-Man does say a lot of the one-liners that you're probably used to from the comic books or the TV series. Like he's saying, "Woohoo, I'm swinging here," or, you know, if you're gonna steal cars, don't dress like a car thief. And my personal favorite, "You found my weakness, it's small lights." And that was a lot of fun. I could definitely tell Garfield had so much fun with this role, and I'd happily see him do it again. And you've got Emma Stone as Gwen Stacy, and I'm just going to say this right here, right now. This is the first time in the Spider-Man lineup that I was actually invested in the romance. Because the romance in here between Peter and Gwen isn't this cliched romance that you'd probably expect. It's really quirky and it's a lot of fun, because they're saying all these cutesy lines to each other, but they handle it a little bit differently. Like, there's one scene where Peter's trying to explain to Gwen that he's Spider-Man, but he doesn't know how to say it, and as she's walking away, Peter shoots his web and just does this whole slingy thing. And I'm thinking to myself, very nicely done, Mr. Parker. So that was really nice, and again, a lot of that I think is due to the direction. This is directed by Mark Webb, who before this did 500 Days of Summer, and I think he brought most of the same style back to this movie, and it really shows. And speaking of that, Gwen is a much more interesting female character, if I hadn't said that already. I think she's a lot of fun, she does get involved, but never to the point where she's the damsel in distress that Mary Jane was. I know I've said that about female characters in other superhero movies, but that's just what I liked about her character. And the fact that she was actually interested in Peter and wanted to help him, I thought that made it more interesting. I think the one point where she kind of got into damsel in distress territory was when she was hiding from the Lizard. Sorry, it's early. And there was this sort of scream thing, but again, never to the point where the Lizard kidnapped her and said, "Come get her, Spider-Man, she's mine," or "Do what I say or she'll die." Ha 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 ha. It never got to that point, and I'm really happy about that. And speaking of the Lizard, yeah, let's talk about that. This is the most controversial role in the film. Not so much because of Rhys Ifans was casting, who I think was great, but mainly because of the appearance of the CG Lizard. And I heard a lot of complaints about the appearance here. I'm hearing, "Oh, he looks terrible. Oh, he looks unrealistic." My personal favorite comment I found on YouTube was, "The Lizard looks like a giant green condom. I'm not buying this." And look, I'm just gonna throw this out there. He's a humanoid lizard. That's a very hard look to pull off. They wanted to make this look real, and despite one or two times where he was talking as the Lizard and some of the CGI I didn't think meshed very well, for the most part I thought they pulled it off pretty well. I liked the look. He kind of had this sort of humanoid dinosaur look, and again, I just thought it was a lot of fun to see this, and I've been wanting the Lizard to be the bad guy for the longest time, so they finally did it, and I thought they did it pretty well. Most everything in this movie, I thought they did it pretty well. There's also a really good supporting cast. Like, you've got Dennis Leary as the obsessed captain of the police, you've got the aunt and uncle that I mentioned earlier, and the action, while a lot of fun, is also a bit more down to earth this time. So most everything in this movie worked out very well. The key word here, though, is most, because the film is not without its flaws. The main flaws, for me personally, come in the first third of this movie, because in the first third we are recreating the origin story, and I think it might be a bit unfair to strike out at this, but we did see this not very long ago, and that is kind of distracting, and because of that, some of the stuff does seem to drag, like Peter becoming Spider-Man. That just moves at kind of a slow pace at times, but that's not the only problem for me. The other problem kind of goes into the second act of this movie, and that's that some things just really aren't built up long enough. Like, the Lizard's transformation, when he infects himself with the serum, he essentially just is like, poof, I'm the Lizard. I mean, there's a jump cut to scenes, but personally, I would have liked it if they focused a little more on his transformation, if they went into this sort of torture kind of thing, like turning into this creature was really driving him insane, but they just closed it in pretty quickly, and it's awkward because that was really quick and the Spider-Man transformation was kind of drawn out, but really that's more of a nitpick. In the end, I really enjoyed this movie. I think it's the Spider-Man reboot that we deserved, and I'm happy that it was made. Are there flaws? Yeah, but for the most part, I really enjoyed it. I can't say that enough. I'm gonna borrow this comment I read from a review that the Raimi trilogy was like a comic book series you'd read in the 60s, but this movie is like what we'd get now, and I thank Mark Webb for it. And I really hope Garfield, Stone, Webb, and the rest of them come back for 2, maybe even 3 more movies, and that this endures as the new Spider-Man series. So, 4 stars out of 5 for The Amazing Spider-Man. And that, folks, is the end of my Spider-Man movie series review. Hope you enjoyed it, and I hope you're all looking forward to my Dark Knight series review later this month. You can find all my movie reviews on my YouTube channel. If you have a movie you'd like me to review, comment on this video or on my channel. You see, I'm stuttering a lot today. Subscribe if you like, and until next time, peace.